Happy holidays, everyone, and welcome to the California High-Speed Rail Authority Board's Finance and Audit Committee meeting for this December 10th, 2020. This morning, format will remain the same as it has been in the past. I understand we have some people from the public who are wishing to speak with us, and if the Secretary wants to make sure that those in the public know what the process is, you can do so now.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning. Welcome to the California High-Speed Rail Finance and Audit Committee meeting. Today, we are hosting this meeting via Zoom. In a moment, we will take public comment. First, I want to run through some important technical aspects of this meeting for offering public comment. If you are logged into this meeting via Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature typically located at the bottom of your screen so that I can call on you to provide your comment. If you're dialing in by phone, pressing *9 will raise your hand and put you into our queue. Speakers will be called in the order that their hand is raised. Once you've been in the queue and your name is called, in the web meeting, please click the prompt on your screen to allow your microphone to be unmuted. Please verify before you wish to speak that your microphone is unmuted. On the phone, we will call on you by the last 4 digits of your phone number. At that point, you'll hear a message that you are being unmuted. Once unmuted, it will be your turn to speak. Please slowly and clearly say and spell your first and last name, and if applicable, state the organization you represent. After your introduction, each speaker is allotted 2 minutes to provide comments. Our reporter is on the line to record these comments. If they need you to spell or repeat something, they may interject. And then, Mr. Chairman, we currently don't have any attendees with their hands raised, but give it a moment to allow.
Okay, thank you. In the interim, let the record please reflect that we have committee members, our Vice Chair Nancy Miller present, as well as Director Ernie Camacho, and we would like to welcome our newest member this morning, Director Jim Gelmetti. Jim, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate the extra time this is going to take from you, and look forward to your participation in the Finance and Audit Committee. And thanks for letting me twist your arm.
Thank you.
Anybody have a raised hand there at this point?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right. What we'll do in that instant, we will go ahead and move forward with today's agenda. And if you see a raised hand, we'll move back and we'll pick them up as we can do so during the course of the meeting. Today's agenda item number 1 is to consider the approval of our committee meeting minutes for the October 15th meeting.
Move approval.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to abstain.
Thank you. And 1 abstention from Director Gelmetti. And moving on to item number 2 this morning is the Finance and Audit Committee comments. I don't have any comments this morning other than the fact that we're very pleased to have Jim join us. Moving on to item 3, our executive summary from the Chief Executive, our Chief Financial Officer. Sorry that I just raised your place in life, Brian Ennis. Welcome, Brian, and thank you for being here, and we're ready to hear your report.
Congratulations, Brian.
Thank you. Good morning, board members. We're going to brief off the PowerPoint here. That's the executive summary in the financial report. So if we go to the second page, we start as we always do here with the accounts payable, aging, and disputes report. And the key finding here is that the authority has not made a late payment penalty or incurred a late payment penalty now in 45 months and did not have any aged invoices in the October reporting period. I did want to note that, through October, this is about 6 months of our emergency telework program due to COVID. And most of our accounting staff is working from their homes. So I just want to note their professionalism and adaptability for 6 months here now, having kept this very good record under the emergency telework program. So lucky to have very good accounting staff. Moving on, we'll go to the cash management report here at the bottom. And as indicated in the table, our Prop 1A ending cash balance at the end of October was $72.8 million, down a bit from September. Most of this amount is in fact accrued against work that's occurred but not yet paid. We also do have some remaining bond authority, specifically for the bookend projects of Caltrain electrification in San Francisco area, LA Union Station, and the Rosecrans Marquardt project in the south, as well as our state operations budget, where we fund state staff and administrative expenses, and that's a bit over $650 million. So again, we do have those Prop 1A resources available for those expenses. We have exhausted, however, our Prop 1A bond funds for the Central Valley construction, and those are being funded currently through our cap and trade revenues, which we'll go to next here. Those are currently at the end of, Justin, if you go back one page, we're cap and trade cash balance at the end of October was $2.055 billion. That total does include the May auction as well as the August auction. It does not yet include the recent November auction, where we have an estimate of those proceeds coming to high-speed rail of $146.8 million, but we don't reflect them in as a cash balance until certain executive orders are implemented by Department of Finance to formally move the money over to our account. Just pausing a bit on cap and trade, I just thought since the calendar year is completed now, our February auction was $153 million for the authority. COVID, of course, came in heavy in March, and our May auction only generated $6 million. The August auction rebounded quite a bit, and our amount was $99 million for the authority. And again, November, our estimate is about $147 million. So that's very similar to what we received in February, roughly $150 million, both in February and November auctions. I do note next auction is in February. One thing that occurs between now and February is the auction floor prices get adjusted a bit. That's a calendar year activity where they're adjusted 5% plus inflation. So historically, November auctions tend to be a little stronger. Sometimes February auctions may be a little weaker for those folks that might, stock up a bit in November. But again, I think the November as well as the August auction do certainly show that recovery of the market since the May downturn. Another note is, as we've stated before, some of the unsold allowances from the May auction, and there were also a few unsold allowances from the August auction. For those to be put up for auction in the future, there needs to be 2 fully subscribed auctions, and November was fully subscribed, meaning that all of the offered allowances did sell. So if that occurs as well for the February auction, by the May auction, we could see some of the unpurchased allowances from the past be put up for sale at that May auction. But again, I think we're still in a bit of a volatile period as we continue with the COVID impacts. So we'll continue to watch that closely through the next calendar year.
But certainly the trends that you've identified both in August and now November are what you had suggested earlier in the year when we had the May result. And so it's pretty encouraging from the perspective of where we were 6 months ago.
Right.
Brian, I have a question. What was the previous year's totals? I mean, you cited February, May, August, and November of this year, how does that compare to the previous year, total dollars?
Well, I can tell you that we had a period starting in 2017. There was a bill that extended cap and trade through 2030. And in that period, from that extension until the May auction, our average annual amount was about $720 million a year. So these last four auctions I cited are a little bit over $400 million for the last calendar year. So clearly, the last four have been below average for our experience in the program. Again, some of that may still come back when those unsold allowances will come up at some future point for resale.
So we're about 300 million, rough and dirty, short of where we'd like to be.
Yes, yeah, you could say that we're running. I think about 320 million by the math I gave you. Less than the average we'd had prior to COVID in those a couple of years prior to COVID.
No, that's understandable. Thank you.
But Brian, for the purposes of how we budget, I believe that what we've encountered in the last year or two, what we've actually received exceeds what we use in our budget numbers. Is that also correct?
That's correct. Yeah, and we tend to talk about a range of 500 million a year to 750 million a year.
Right.
And again, even with the last year, we have been within that range. Again, last year was below it, but if you take the full period, we've been receiving these cap and trade percentages. We are within that range of 500 million to 750 million.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. I believe we can go on just into the next slide. Thank you. So this is our administrative budget, state operations. Through October, of course, that's 4 months into the fiscal year, or 33% of the fiscal year completed. And we've expended about 18.4% of, or 13.5 million of our administrative budget. I've mentioned, I believe in the past, and mention again here, the budget for the fiscal year that's indicated at 73.6 million. That's the budget as of the Budget Act passing in June. There have been some additional austerity measures due to COVID, the furloughs, for example, and the savings related to that, some state operations cuts that are statewide, not just high-speed rail, but our budget targets fallen about 2.6 million. In other words, a reduction in what we can actually spend below the 73.6. But again, due to our vacancies, we added about 85 new state positions and reduced consulting positions as part of this year's budget. So we're still implementing the new state staff. And while we fill those vacant positions, we do have savings, so we won't have an issue staying within our state ops budget again, even with some of the cuts that are made for budget savings.
I have a question, and I'm the new guy, so I get to ask stupid questions. Why are these positions so important? Why am I looking at these? Why are we tracking them? I mean, to me, it's about schedule and maintaining schedule and maintaining budget. So I'm not sure why we have this category that we track vacant positions.
Well, I think certainly in the past, where sometimes filling positions has been a solution to a problem we're trying to solve. So I think the board has in the past been interested in, knowing how we're doing filling positions, again, as a metric of staffing up to address workload. Here, again, as I mentioned, a lot of these positions are replacing consultant staff. And as we do fill the state position, the consultant staff will be reduced. But again, happy to report the information that the board's interested in seeing and hear I guess we have the general numbers of overall vacancies, and then, of course, if there's any specific positions that the board's interested in, we can report on the status of those as well.
Yeah, my concern is they don't tie to the budget, they don't tie to the schedule. So, to me, I'm budget oriented, I'm schedule oriented. So I'm not sure what this does to help satisfy my concerns.
Yeah, Jim, I think those are good points. Over the course of the last several years, one of the major concerns that we've had is whether or not we have the appropriate number of staff to handle the responsibilities that the authority has, and that has been a problem certainly in the past. And we have seen over the years always a vacancy rate that exceeds what you would expect, as we've been told, in other agencies in the state. So the concern was, at the same time activity was ramping up in our project, do we have the resources to ensure that we are managing it appropriately? So that's the reason that there was a focus on the numbers of positions. I don't disagree at all with your comments as to how it applies to budget and schedule, but indirectly on the schedule side of things, it's making sure that we've got the resources. And if I just had a short conversation with Brian Annis on this yesterday, and that was how important are these positions that we're showing as vacants? Do we actually need them? And the process we're going through right now is a transfer from the reliance, to the extent that we had in the past, with outside consultants, in this instance the RDP, and replacing a good deal of what, I don't want to say a good deal, I don't know what the percentage is, but transferring workload from outside consultants to state staff. So the answer was we need the people. So if we need the people, I'm concerned, how long is it going to take to get there, and what do we have to do to accelerate the personnel resources we need and authority to do the work if we're going to replace the outside consultants.
Tom, wasn't this also part of the results of the audit that came back, where the audit suggested that we ought to be using more state staff than consultants?
No, I don't disagree with that. Maybe there's a better way of tracking, eliminating the consultants and their specific responsibilities with our hires and what those responsibilities will be. Anyway, I've been looking at these numbers, and they're kind of meaningless to me because they don't really tell me anything.
Okay. Nancy, did I hear you getting ready to say something?
Well, just sort of in the spirit of that comment, a lot of these things that we get reported to us are vestiges of problems we had in the past. And I'm not so sure, and I agree with what Jim said. I mean, I'm not so sure they're all that relevant now because of the certain things that we've taken over, particularly the switch from the consultants in terms of, so anyway, it's something that we might want to look at about whether or not we need this information going forward.
I think it's something we can take a look at. I'd certainly like to see some movement on the vacancy rate to make sure that without the one thing it does by having it on the screen before us is at least it focuses the question on how we're doing on it. If we can see some real movement on vacancy, I would agree. It would appear to be more of a concern or consideration that from the past, and we can look at other things that are certainly more in keeping with specifics of schedule and cost and that sort of thing.
Tom, if I can make a suggestion, for example, let's say we're trying to replace outside right-of-way agents. I'm just using an example.
Sure.
I would rather see something in a report that tells us we've hired 5 in-house people or 10 in-house people, and we do not have any outside right-of-way agents anymore, that we've taken that over with state people.
Yeah.
But there's nothing in this thing that tells me that we've replaced a consultant and a consultant's duties with
Yeah.
state people and state people duties.
I think that's a good point. I'm not sure that there is a one. This, of course, is the summary of what's in the individual reports behind the executive summary. But I think that's a good point, Jim. I'm not sure that I can recall off the top of my head that we've got any report that indicates as we've increased or as we're increasing state staff, what the reduction is in consultant staff. There may be a reflection on what we're actually spending for consultants, but not an indication of how many consultant staff is no longer are no longer necessary for the project because they've been replaced. Brian, that's something that we could take a look at.
Yeah, I believe we would have that number of consultants on board in a given month. And
Yeah,
also just mentioned for the board, the detail behind this is tab 6. If you have
yeah,
a binder where there's about 4 additional pages of detail where the vacancies are split out by offices.
right.
And there's a chart as well that gives a 12-month look at the change in vacancy rates.
Yeah.
And so again, that's additional information.
Right. It's all moving in the right direction. And I know we added those 85 positions and they cover a number of areas. So, you know,
Mr. Chairman, if I could just add
Sure.
some context here, just so everybody's on the same page. I thought Ernie made a very good point earlier. Recall that when there was an audit done, there was an identification of areas where the auditor was concerned about consultants doing certain tasks here. So if that audit came in, we did a division by division review of that issue and identified more broadly where we can have state staff appropriately doing state staff work and reducing consultants
Right.
in those areas. We just got that approved by the legislature this budget cycle. That's the reason that the vacancy rate has gone up, is because we just got those positions approved, and now we are spending this year working through those and hiring up. There are a lot of ways for us to present that. What we presented to the legislature showed a cost savings for us of raising state staff in certain areas and reducing the consultants. I think there are better ways for us to reflect that, and it's something that we should work with you to get right, because primarily this is about right sizing and balancing the organization.
Yeah.
At one point, we were roughly 70-30 consultant, and this is part of a balancing of that to get it more to a balanced place.
Yeah.
So that drove all of this. That's where we are. That's why this is presented. But I think there are better ways for us to show that we're executing a specific plan that has specific savings, and we can show that probably in other ways. So it's something we should work on, I would say.
Okay, great, thanks. I think that Jim's point, I think the point is, as you said, how is this impacting the authorities' plan to move employees to the state side and reduce employees? So that's the one part we don't have, is how as we increase the state employees, how is that affecting the reduction in consultants who are doing work that now the state will assume. Okay, good points, Jim. Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks, Jim.
And Justin, I believe we can move to the next slide. This is the capital outlay report for the reporting month of October. And I did want to start out reiterating what the point in time we are at for these numbers. For October, these are what we call accrual numbers or earned value for the month of October. The October invoices tend to get submitted in early November. We spend 30 to 45 days reviewing those and paying those. So the October invoices typically will get paid, in this case, in mid-December. So the numbers you see here, again, are not the final invoice numbers. We also, in the reporting month, make an adjustment for the prior month, which would be September in this case. And again, that's due to this difference in timing. So if the actual invoice is paid are less in September than what we had accrued or reported before, we do make the adjustment as well in the reporting month here, which is October. So I'll give an example of that as we go forward, but just wanted to start with that clarification as a point in time. But the benefit of reporting how we do here, instead of waiting for all invoices to be fully cleared and paid, is the board is getting a little more fresh information, more timely information. But again, want to clarify that these are not based on fully reviewed and paid invoices, but instead are based on, in most cases, submitted invoices that are still under review. With that said, the monthly capital outlay expenditures in total, this is the second row of the top table, show 109 million of expenditures for that month, which is down. You'll see about 16 million from September, up about 20 million from last October. And then we, for the running total of the fiscal year, the first 4 months, we show total expenditures of capital outlay at 480 million. And then we start breaking those sums down into categories. On the bullets in the middle of the page, we show that if we break it down specifically by the construction packages, the total for the month is 93.5 million. When we say packages, that includes the design build, the project construction management, the right-of-way purchases, et cetera, for those CPs. And then we break it up in the individual CP sections there, with CP1 at 44 million, CP23 at 34, and CP4 at 15. We also further split that up into exclusively the design build invoices for the CPs. And for the month of October, you'll see here the numbers 42 million. That's broken up CP1 at 13.2, CP23 at 20.4 million, and CP4 at 8.3 million. And I wanted to mention, because it's a larger number than we usually see, there was a adjustment for the month of September when we paid final invoices. So this design build number for October only actually came in about 63 million at the accrued level for what the initial invoices are indicating. However, we had a adjustment for September. When we reported September originally, we had estimated about 45 million in invoice payments to CP23, but that ended up in the final payment of that invoice for September being 24 million. So this reflects that difference, about 21 million reduction for the month of September is showing up here essentially in the October data. So again, kind of 63 million of earned value, if you will, minus 21 million of offset for the month of September. And basically that was due to some charges from that design builder that when we looked at them, they weren't eligible yet for payment. So those were removed from the payment of the invoice. Joe, when he gets to his CVSR, there's some similar overlap where we're trying to, explain the accounting here. And Joe and myself and our staffs do work to make sure we're conforming across our two reporting documents here every month to the FNA. But happy to answer any questions on that accounting matter.
Yeah, Brian, what do you mean they weren't eligible to bill? I don't quite understand that.
Sure. Well, there were some items billed in the September invoice that when we looked at them, they were based on change order proposals that have not yet been approved. So we would not pay those until they're
I got it. Thank you.
Sure.
By the way, too, I will not repeat what Brian said. I give full concurrence and support, so you won't hear that again from me. So it's spot on. It was a great explanation. Those change orders have been and are being processed as we speak. It'll allow them to build for work that was done at risk.
Thank you, Joe. Go ahead, Brian.
Sure. The table at the bottom is a bit of another breakdown, and I might just point out right away came in fairly high in the month of October, about 45 million. Also note the bookend project billing continues to come in lower than we anticipate. This is mostly the Caltrain project that's currently billing. You see here for the bookends, only 1.2 million billed for October. The total for the first 4 months of the fiscal year on the bookend projects is 26.5 million. Again, we set aside 350 million total for the budget for the fiscal year, so that is continuing to come in a bit lower than expectations on that side. There's no questions on that. We can.
The time impact adjustment is, are we saying that we are budgeting 23%?
No, that's
Or is that just the number that is being?
that's the total payment to the design build contracts. So we don't have a TIA estimate in here, but as any occur, we'll report them. So in the line that says not applicable NA, time impact analysis payment. So there's none have occurred yet in the first 4 months of the fiscal year. So that's why we indicate NA. And again, if any do occur, you'll see a number in the reporting month.
Do we have a feel for what that might be in total for CP1, 2, and 3, and 4? And is that being budgeted for? Do we have some sort of a budget to accommodate that?
Well, that is an item that would come out of the contingency. I don't have a specific budget for that. Yeah, again, would certainly report anything that comes about, and that's why we have the split on the table.
If it exceeds contingency, where do we grab it from?
Well, in a couple of slides, I do have the contingency reporting to show you the current status of contingency. We do have contingency for each construction package, and then we do have an unallocated contingency above that. So those would be the two categories you'd look to first.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
If I could just ask a quick question here on, it's just in terms of the summary of kind of where we are. I liked Ernie's question about, the use potentially of contingency, even though our overall budget utilization is not exactly where it should be. I like the fact that right of way is, and maybe this is part of your presentation, Joe, about where we are in terms of our timeline, because some of these numbers are, utilization numbers are very low. Some seem close to target, and some seem, like Ernie said, like we might have to go into contingency. So is that something that Joe is going to talk to us about, or is that something you can address right now?
Nancy, I will show you exactly where we're at with regard to the road procurement.
All right.
And it is the result. One of the things that you're seeing that's coming about is into the rebaselining of this is that we do need to put additional funds towards right away. We recognize that.
Okay.
And that was driven by predominantly the significant parcel increase that we had to take. That's why we have exceeded our budgets.
Okay. I'll look forward to that. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Nancy, but that was correct.
I think, Justin, we can go to the next slide. So this slide at the top is showing our total project expenditures, and these are all categories from 2006 through October. And you'll see here our total expenditures for the overall project are about 7.8 billion, and 75% of those are construction expenditures. And the next largest category is project development or environmental, which is 16%. And then we split up next to local assistance, which is our bookend projects. And finally, our state operations or administration expenses are listed at the bottom. As we go to the bottom of the page here, some very good news on the status of the ARA match. If you note the column here, column B or FRA approved match to date, it's indicating 690 million. That number had previously been stuck at about 477 million for about 2 years, as the FRA had disengaged on giving us feedback as we've been submitting matches. But in October, they did provide feedback. They approved another 213 million of invoices, and so that's reflected here. More good news, they also on Monday of this week gave us additional feedback. They approved another 55 million of invoices. So that would bump this 690 million up to 745. The other positive is behind the scenes. They've reviewed another 900 million of invoices across these two submittals. And they've told us that almost 750 million of that 900 looks fine. However, they approve or as a package. So we do submit multiple invoices at the same time. And if there's a question with one invoice out of a package of 10 invoices, they do hold approval of the other 9 until they receive an answer to their satisfaction on the 10th that they have a question on. So we are working through the submittal from October, and I think as of this week, we'll have resubmitted responses to all their questions. If they find those satisfactory, then their approval would bump us up almost 400 million from that October feedback. And again, is about additional 500 million that they flagged for the reporting of this week. There were, I think of that package, there was a much smaller number of invoices with questions, about 23 million. And so again, another big tranche of invoices they had no questions on, indicating they're likely okay with those. And so really, we hope if, we are responding fairly quickly to this. We've responded fully this week to the October package. And, if it takes a similar amount of time in January, we'll hope to have fully responded to the December comments. And if all goes well with those responses, we would hope approval would jump up closer to $1.6 billion. We're also continuing to submit, of course, to meet the full match. The full match is $2.5 billion. And through October, we had submitted over 2 billion of that. And then we're working on additional invoices in-house to prepare for submittal. So really through October, the bottom bullet here, we think we're 99.4% complete with invoices through October. And again, just doing the required documentation for submittal to submit those. So good news, again, in early 21, we should be submitting our final invoice package for approval for the ARA match.
Yeah, Brian, can I ask a question about the total project expenditures? The category of construction, you have at 5.8 and 75%. What does that 75% represent? It certainly doesn't represent 75% of project completion, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, it's 75% of the dollars spent were on construction.
Okay, so we have 25% left in that category.
That's correct.
So if we're probably certain that we will expend more than 25% more to finish the project. So is that all going to be contingency?
Well, no, we have budgeted. Let me, maybe if I explain it this way. So this particular table on expenditures, this is exclusively reflecting expenditures that we've made through October. So it's not forward looking at all. it's only saying of the money we've spent from 2006 through October 2020, here's the categories of those expenditures.
Isn't it all we're looking at here is we're just looking at what of the total amount that's been spent to date, 75% has been spent on construction.
Right.
And
right.
it's not an indication of how much we still got to spend on construction, but just
Okay.
the construction spend as a percentage of total expenditures.
Right.
It's just a little misleading when it's represented this way.
Yeah, we could perhaps put a label above the percentage here to make it a little clearer.
It would be a little clearer, yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Tom.
You bet.
I believe we can move on to the next slide. So this is our contracts and expenditures report. Here in the first line, we indicate the number of contracts, active contracts. We have 205 contracts, which is relatively level here, down 4 contracts from September, up 4 from a year ago. We also indicate the total value of contracts at $8,356 million. And toward the end of this table, we indicate our small business utilization rate, which we've talked about in prior meetings. This has been fairly steady over the last couple of years. After I think 4 years ago, it was kind of in the it's indicated, I guess, bullet 4 here was 16.2% in 2015, but and has increased to this 21% and is stayed at that level for the reporting over the last year, about that level. At the last bullet, just to point out, we do have 570 small businesses actively working on the high-speed rail project. 184 of those are DBEs, and 60 are certified disabled veteran business enterprises. No questions there. We'll move on to the next slide. So this is our contingency reporting, and I think the best way to go through this probably on the top table, moving left to right. There's a column, second column here is the CP1 total allocated. So that represents the contingency level approved by the board in May of 2019. And the next column, CP1 accumulated authorized, that represents the contingency that's been assigned through change orders and other obligations. And the next column then indicates we have 457 million of remaining unassigned contingency for CP1. And similar for CP23, total initially authorized in May was 1,085 million. We have 307 million remaining in unused contingency. CP4 was started at 340 million, and we have 152 million left. And then we have other categories of contingency, 3 categories, which are in the rows, and they sum to 931 million authorized as of May 2019. We have directed 76 million of that contingency to date, leaving a remaining balance of 854 million in that other contingency balance. Again, that's split by the rows. The unallocated contingency initially in May at 426 million. The interim use or project reserve, which is a federal related contingency at 208 million. And the other category, which is the non-DB scope, things like program-wide expenditures, management, things of that nature, that's 297 and 16 million of that has been used. So overall, again, we started in May of 2019 with 3.6 billion of contingency. And through this reporting period, the amount assigned or used is 1.8 billion, leaving 1.7 billion remaining that hasn't been used to date. The bottom half of this table, we do report to the board as a line item matter any assigned contingency for a contract that exceeds $25 million. For the month of October, there were no assignment of contingency over 25 million, so there's no line item reporting here. However, Joe Hedges in the CVSR, he does report the individual DB contingencies that were, change orders that were implemented in the month of October. We also show here the 29 million, which is the cumulative amount of smaller change orders that were approved in October, and those do tie back to Joe's reporting in more detail in the CVSR.
Brian, I have a question. For example, if we don't use all the contingency in CP1 and CP2 and 3 needs more money in their contingency, can you move one to the other?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Great. I think one more page here, which is our what we call internally the flash report. So this is kind of a preliminary look at what we'll be reporting to you in January. And this is, again, I always want to emphasize, very preliminary. In some cases, we have not received the invoices yet. It's contract managers reporting what they understand based on conversations with the contractors. But we do report here by construction package, by DB first, and then by the overall construction package, where you would also be pulling in the right-of-way and the project construction manager. So overall here, for all the construction packages, design build, we're looking at this point at an estimate of 58.7 million for the month of November. Other categories, again, the right-of-way and other CP-related categories gets us to 86 million, and then all the total capital outlay right now is looking like 99 million, which is the comparison to October shown here, which is about 10 million less than our current October numbers that we're reporting. The other things we report at the bottom of the page here are the administration, and we did have quite a leap in filling vacancies in the month of November. You can see here vacancies falling from 128 positions to 116 positions. So that's a better than average pace for that. And then we also report here the ARA submittals really for November. And you'll note here there's a state match to ARA that indicates a fairly big jump here of about 240 million. So we did submit a large number of additional invoice packages in November to FRA, taking our numbers submitted to almost 2.3 billion. Again, our match requirement is 2.5 billion. So we are quickly closing in on completion of that ARA match requirement of our grant with the federal government. And that concludes the CFO report.
Brian, thank you. Any questions from any of my colleagues for Brian?
Thank you, Brian.
Great job.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks,
I
Brian.
concur. Very good job, Brian. Thank you very much. And with that, we will move on to our last agenda item, the Central Valley update. Joe, you're on. Good morning. You're on mute, Joe. Mute.
I got it.
There you go.
Okay. Good morning. Sorry.
Good morning.
Go to tab 10 if you're please following in your F&A books. I'm going to brief from pages 2, 3, and 4, which are the executive summaries. I will walk you through the pages as I brief from that executive summary. Let me start with page 11. Next page. Page 11. What page 11 shows that our cumulative invoices at date is just slightly underneath $3 billion. 3 billion will be a milestone. We are slightly overperforming that. And we expect basically we have about you can see that there is approximately what we estimate right now, about 5.7 billion, which includes tracking systems as in to be able to achieve the ARA fulfillment. Okay. So that gives you basically where we're at to where we need to go. Moving to pages 12, next page. What you will see on page 12 is the following. As Brian already explained, right, the October total invoice was for 62.4. However, we took an adjustment for September of 20.6. That is why you're seeing the 42 there. Okay. Now this was to an expected of 82. Predominantly, what we're seeing right now is that we're pushing through that first order work a little bit slow on a few startups, and I'll show you where those startups were a little bit slow at and later in the report. Okay. So again, let me state is some of the primary drivers of lower expectation are CP1 delays in utility relocation, and CP4 also in utility relocation, and then the start of the work of the intrusion barrier systems. Okay. Currently, as Brian already indicated, we expect next month to be about 60-ish. We're showing 61. Brian was a little bit lower. His dates are probably a little bit more update, but it'll be around the 60-ish number for our anticipated November invoice. Okay. As of amount right now, currently we are about 60.6% expensed total cumulative against all of the CPs. Moving to page 13. You can see that we keep increasing the number of workers. We have achieved a milestone of 1,200 of the last couple weeks, and we're holding there currently. Now, again, as you can see, the steady increase of workers on site, which is a good indication of the amount of real work that is taking place out there. It just keeps increasing. Okay. We're starting to see some impacts too, as you see across California. The severity of COVID in recent right now is starting to pick up slightly. So we're taking extreme cautions wherever we can on the projects. We're maintaining social distancing. Additional of personal protective equipment is mask on job sites. All the workers are wearing masks basically every time they're on a job site, with exceptions of eating and drinking. Extreme hygiene out there. Okay. So as a result, we've been able to contain COVID, but we are starting to experience some impacts. All right, moving to page 14. All right. Guideway. We have 79 miles constructed or underway compared to the 119. That is the total for CP1 through 4. We've been able to get 1 mile increase in the last month, which is a good news story. Structures, we have 50 underway compared to the 93 total. So we're over 50%, which is very good compared to where we were basically a year ago. Now, we've had an increase of 3 structures from the previous month. CP1 is 2 structures behind. CP2-3 is 3 structures behind plan, and CP4 is on plan. You can see that the structures CP1, 15.5, we had to delay that over the moratorium because of the PG&E utility relocation. Belmont Avenue has been slightly delayed because of a railroad switch. We're working on that as we currently talk. Deer Creek and Avenue 136 were delayed by right-of-way. Looks like we have the agreements for Deer Creek. That is a significant viaduct, a long structure, elevated causeway, so that'll be very good news. 136 is just a short type 2 bridge. So, and Avenue 24 is scheduled to start, has started in December. So that's very, very good news. Now, also very good news is utility relocations. We've commenced another 38 utility relocations in October. You can see that we're basically at about 53% of either completed, underway, or about to get underway on the utility relocations. So we keep making substantial progress at that first order work. Okay. Moving to page 15. Okay. This is basically is consistent with what the CFO just reported. What's important for regards to the construction contracts is this, is that we have approximately $454 million that have been put towards small businesses on all three CPs for about just under 18%. Okay. They are approximately 12% off that 30% goal. Right. And we've increased basically from the previous month about $11.3 million. So making slow progress, but it is slow progress. Each of the CPs have been given contractual letters as in to put corrective action plans in place. So hopefully in the December, January period, we will start seeing a significant uptick in the small business.
I have a question on this. How realistic is the 30% and who said it?
Jim, let me jump in. That was a board action several years ago, based upon an aspirational goal of 30%, and a strong position by members of the board at the time of the importance of the small business participation in the project. I think that one of the things, and it's been a challenge. We have always been told that what we'll see an increase in the utilization as construction ramps up, and to some extent that's been the case thus far. We never defined how much does the construction have to ramp up in order to see a substantial move in that. One thing that, first of all, I think it's certainly something that we'd like to accomplish, or certainly that the board in the past did, and I suspect the current one, but we've also got to be realistic about what the likelihood is of accomplishment, not to give up on an aspirational goal of 30%, but to at least have some reasonable expectation of what we can achieve. And I think that we might be achieving more than other state agencies. That might be something to take a look into. Might also be something to take a look into as to what goals other state agencies have. If we could make 30%, it would be wonderful. But if we can't, or if it's just not justifiable, we ought to be realistic about it also.
Yeah, I mean, when I was on the CTC, Caltrans goal wasn't anywhere near 30%. I think it's admirable that we set a high goal, but I don't think it's very realistic. So I think we should take another look at that. We're only fooling ourselves if 30% is not achievable.
Yeah. I think that that's a good thought. It also is. I just had an opportunity to have a short conversation with Brian Anish yesterday. We discussed that a little bit also. So why don't we just take a next step in order to make some sort of a initial determination of what other state agencies are doing, what do we think is achievable, and because this is a board action and policy, we could perhaps then move it forward to the board for consideration if we think that there is there's a justification for a change.
Yeah, Tom?
I think Caltrans is the one we ought to follow because they do what we're doing. They're building roads, they're building structures,
Yeah,
So it's similar work. I think we
absolutely.
need to take a hard look at what Caltrans is doing.
Okay.
Yeah, Tom, I think that one of the things that we had talked about is when in fact, we move our construction activity into the southern part of California,
Yeah,
where we have a majority of many more small businesses, women-owned businesses, veteran-owned businesses. They have not had an opportunity to participate because of where the construction activity is occurring. So when we look at that, I think that we will be able to, our numbers will increase substantially. So I think that, concentrating our activity currently in the Central Valley is admirable and it's good. But I don't think that's where the concentration of businesses are. I think it becomes much more realistic when we reach Southern California.
well, that it'd be certainly good to see improvement. I think, and I don't have off the top of my head, any kind of a geographic breakdown of where our small businesses come from. I know that there are small businesses located in Northern California. I have to believe they're in Southern California. That might be something, Brian Annis, if we could also take a quick look at, if you could just generate the data for us as to where the small businesses who are currently under contract. I say currently, I don't know if maybe as you look into that, maybe we ought to take a look at where they have been. If we've had, oh, there we go. We're getting something here.
Can I just, I think,
Yeah. Just,
go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry, Nancy. I was just looking. I don't know if you had a chance to check your screen with what they've just put up.
Yeah.
No, 201 out of Northern California, 176 in Central Valley, and 177 currently in Southern California, and 16 outside.
Hey, Tom.
Yeah.
So I think,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nancy. I apologize.
oh, I was just going to say that I really am not, I don't think we should go back to the board with an idea of reducing our aspirational goal, just not right now. I mean, I just think there's a whole lot of reasons to not do that right now, particularly since I know it was just aspirational and we knew that it was a goal that no other, I don't think any other construction project had tried to attain.
Yeah.
And maybe what we do on these slides is state that and state what the Caltrans goal is. And because I think Caltrans is 20%. I could be wrong. Brian, you would know.
No, I think you're about right.
And so we've met, and you would say we've met the state goal, but we're trying to go higher where we can. And in other words, I just hate to get in an argument with people about why we're reducing our goal that is so politically sensitive. And quite frankly, we should maybe be trying to attain it. It might be unattainable. You're exactly right.
Brian, sure.
If I could, if Justin could put that graphic up again on the small business utilization.
Sure.
I do think there's something to say here. One is the numbers that Joe is showing. The numbers that Joe is showing in the CVSR report are related to small businesses directly in the construction space. However, we have many small businesses beyond that. This reflects where we're using small businesses on all parts of the enterprise. It's important to note for all of you that in a lot of those other spaces, we are hitting the 30% goal. So what I think might be useful is to bring a data set back to the board that breaks down where we are hitting that number, where we are showing the 30% goal being achieved in those areas where we got to strive to get to that aspiration. I think it's also useful to compare it to other construction type agencies in California to show where that is. But I want to be clear that there are many types of contracts at which we are hitting that objective. And then there's a set where it's a little bit more difficult in the construction space. But we can break that down and show that to the board in the future, at least you all.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Brian. I think if we could first bring it through the F&A and I think I know there's been some concern about how we're doing with professional services contracts also. Maybe take a look at that. But I think that maybe what we're suffering for is maybe some additional data breakdown. I don't disagree with you at all, Nancy. I thought it's a noble aspirational goal. I think what we've got to do is make every effort to accomplish it. But I think it also, I think Jim is correct. I think Caltrans is I think their goal is something like 20 or 21%. I don't believe they're there, but they could be, but at least that's where they are. What I don't want us to do is to back off on something that we think is achievable, or that we think that through hard work we can achieve, but we need to be realistic about what we can do also. And so I think, Brian, the idea of generating additional information and bringing it back to the board, whether it, if it's next month or the month after, I'm sensitive to all the other work that you've got underway. Let's take a look at it, and then let's, at least as an information item, move it onto we can deal with it either as a separate item or as just a part of the finance and audit update to the board at each monthly meeting.
I think there's very important context to this. I think the aspiration is correct.
Yeah, exactly.
Strive for, and I think we can show where we're hitting it, where there's more challenge, and compare that to what other agencies do.
Sure.
Even in Joe's numbers, I believe, I'm going off the top of my head, but I think CP1 is somewhere around 24%, for example. So while we're struggling in some areas, others are doing better. And as we pick up, we want to see that go. But I think the context is important. I'd like to bring that back to you.
Yeah. Great.
Mr. Chairman, one last, I think Nancy was absolutely correct. I think if we announce that we are reducing this aspirational goal, it sends the wrong message.
Great.
That politically we shoot ourselves in the foot.
Okay.
One of the things too,
All right.
one of the things too in construction, please consider is that we'll have over $5 billion or so worth of construction underway in a very, very condensed period of time, and drawing heavily upon all of the small businesses in that area. So we're going to meet their capacity very shortly. That's another consideration in this setting aspirational goals, and the consideration of a good faith effort, which is the primary thing that we're looking at for the contractors. Good faith. Do your best. That's our contractual responsibility, is to put forth a good faith effort here. And we're monitoring.
Good faith with a big foot in your back to make it happen as best it can. Can we then, if I may then, Brian, Kelly, when do you want to? How much time do you want to schedule before you bring this back to us?
I will say candidly, I think we have a lot that we're going to have to talk about at our January hearing.
Yeah.
Objective here would be probably to want to come back to you all, at least in a public domain, in February with context.
Okay. All right. That's good. So we'll
bring it to FNA for the initial review about where we are, look at what other agencies do.
Great.
And then and also show again where we are hitting it and where there's more challenges.
Okay, great.
I can lay that out. I'd like to do that in February.
Okay, done. So we'll make sure it's on the schedule. If the secretary to make sure that occurs. And thank you for the conversation, and for the support still for what the board policies has been in the past. Okay, Joe, you're back up.
Yes, sir. Let's go with page 16, which we're going to talk about right away. Answering some of Nancy's questions. Okay. This is a summary of the numbers. Next page, please. Go to page 17. Okay. This is a graphical representation of page 16. Okay. What you're seeing here is that parcels delivered to the design builder, we delivered 20 parcels, and we have 14 parcels that what I call are delinquent. Now, these parcels are linked now to the contractor schedule. So it says that we have some impact. Now, those 14 parcels, 2 are in September, as you can see, and 12 are in October. We track each parcel as an individual, not as a number. The 2 parcels missed in September are basically at CP1 at the location of Carnegie and CP4 at McCombs. Now, McCombs we delivered in early November, which is a very good news story because that was on critical path. That was the big critical path driver for CP4. So right now, all right, currently we are not in delay in CP4, which is a very good news story. Okay. And CP in October, all right, CP23, we missed 3 parcels. There were 2 were at Nebraska and 1 at Tule River. Okay. To mitigate that, we're doing out of sequence work to try to implement workarounds. CP4, 7 parcels were missed. These 7 parcels are predominantly to one owner. All right. It's the Semi-Tropic. We've been working collaboratively with them. Semi-Tropic Irrigation District. We just received their red lines, to the final red lines to the escrow documents. So we're working through those as we speak. Hopefully within this month, in the month of December, my Christmas present and birthday present will be the signature of those Semi-Tropics. That will represent about 6 months of work. Very great job with regards to the right of way. Moving up. Next page, please. This is to the railroad. As you can see that we are ahead of the railroad parcels. We have the ability, the agreements are in place. We can basically take railroad parcels anytime we need them. We take them predominantly as we need them, as in not to keep these in inventory. I like to take them and immediately turn them over to the design builder. So there's no impediments here with regards to being able to take railroad parcels. So next slide, please. Slide 20. Okay. Also, before I go to slide 20, I also want to point out that basically for land rights conveyances right now, there's no issues with land right conveyances. Right now, we're working very well with PG&E. Anytime that we're able to get a full set of right-of-way and drawings, we're able immediately to implement that land conveyance. So that is no longer a critical path impact delay there. Currently, right now, we have, with regards to PG&E, we're well over 50% of the land conveyances, making very, very good progress over the last year. Remember, we went from 0 to 50 within this year. Another great call out. Third-party agreements. As you can see, we have 7 remaining key agreements that we need. Those are progressing without issue, but we were able to achieve 2 non-critical this month. What's important to also to highlight is that within this last year, we finalized 45 agreements. 35 of those were critical to construction. Amazing job there. Next slide, please. Slide 21.
Can I just go back?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. Is that all right, Tom?
Please.
It's just the city of Wasco issue
Mhm.
that we've seen before the board. I know that, Brian, you went down and met with them. I just noticed on the slide, and maybe this is coming in closed session and I should stop talking.
Brian Kelly might
Yeah.
pipe in here yeah, go ahead, Brian. Is this something that we ought to back off on in terms of the public hearing because
Let
if
me
there's
just
any
comment on-
potential that
No, I think it's okay. On the city of Wasco issue, remember, we're not in litigation with them.
No,
I know we're not, but is there any threat to litigation?
No, not at this point. In fact, we're working in cooperation.
Okay.
They've asked us to, they filed a complaint concerned that we're not dealing with an issue relative to demolition of a housing area where we built new housing. Open question on what to do with the housing that was in place.
Right.
We are working with them. In fact, we just signed a tolling agreement with them to sort of delay, if you will, that the complaint they filed against us while we work through with them on approaches to.
Okay, that's
So-
fine. Yeah, thanks. I
We're
just,
working it through.
when it said
Yeah.
halt negotiations, it concerned me. Okay,
There
thanks.
were, for the record, the City of Wasco is working very cooperatively currently with us. They're proposing no impact to any of the construction.
Okay, thanks, Joe. You can go ahead.
Environmental permitting, we have two remaining agreements. Neither of these are in risk. So again, as everything is moving, we have no work impeded right now by any environmental issue. We've been able to basically to clear and work very cooperatively with CDFW. Again, another great success story. Next slide, please. Now I can speak to each of the CPs if you so desire me, but traditionally this is kind of where I stop at. It's important too that you will be able to see in each of the CPs, you will be able to see that we've executed a total of 29.3 change orders. If you go to page 25, you'll be able to see that one of those was that 2.2 in CP1. If you go to page 36, you will see that we've implemented 15 worth 25.7. And if you go to page 47, you will see that we've implemented 3 change orders approximately worth 1.3 in CP4. That is the full accounting of the change orders that were executed in the month of October. All these change orders have been subject to the internal governance of HSR. And that concludes, unless you want
Joe,
me to
thank you.
go any other.
Yes, did somebody have a question? All right, hearing none. Anything else for Joe? All right, Joe, good report, thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Do any of the committee members have anything else for today's meeting that you'd like to bring up?
Nope.
Okay, hearing none, then thank you very much, everyone. For those of you listening or watching, please try, if you're able, join us at the board meeting at 11 o'clock this morning. With that, the business of the Finance and Audit Committee is completed for day. Again, happy holidays to all of you and good day. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.